Hello. All right. Had some difficulties there getting set up. It looks like I'm live. A little bit of lag. Set up. All right. Audio's coming through. And I have no idea how to see my chat in this case. I haven't set that up. So if there's any viewers up there right now, which I see that there aren't. Probably because I just started streaming out of the blue. Um, I won't really be able to see the comments that come in, but I'll just get right into it. So, what am I doing here? Why am I live? I'm back. I haven't been on Instagram. I haven't been on any platform really for a while. And there's good reason for that. And I have good reasons why I'm starting to do this live. So, just wanted to take some time to explain that so that I can then also cut this up and bring it into smaller bits of content, which will make sense standing alone as well. So this session is going to be a bit comprehensive because I'm going to tell a little bit of what I'm doing here, what the goal is for the year, what kind of content you could expect from me in 2023, and yeah, what I plan to get out of it and what really the mission is with this. So for those that don't know, the visual mode is something I started quite a while back when I was in university. And the reason why I did that is because I love teaching, but I never really liked the conventional way of teaching that university courses have. So my solution was to start holding workshops. And this was back when personal brands were just popping off very, very early on, 2012, 2013. I don't even think I started that early, but I started with the workshops that early and had some friends that were in branding, doing their own personal brand, starting their Instagrams, all that good stuff. And thought I should have a brand too. So at some point, I started the Visual Mode, which became a company through which I've done many, many projects. So the reason I actually stepped away from content for a while was because I had to, in a way, find myself, right? There was no rhyme or reason to what I was putting up. It was just kind of what I found interesting at the time and what I was learning that I thought was worth sharing. So the reason I stepped away was I kind of had to align myself and really have a good sense of what it is that my effort and time was going to and what I was doing it for. So what came out of that really was I've realized what I've known all along. I've just reinforced it and really actually like made a plan for exercising that now as a career. I'm a 3D artist and a graphic designer. I've always been inclined towards architecture and specifically really enthralled with the content on video games and movies that display amazing architecture, amazing sets, amazing lighting, amazing design, really. So I went to school for architecture, which has given me a pretty robust background in design. And to really bring it home as to what it is that I'm doing here, so this is why I keep notes, I'm taking a lot of notes, is I'm going to be doing content, and the content that I'll be doing is going to revolve around a singular project, a project that I'm going to be working on the entire year, a project that I already started, and I have a very good idea of where it's going. And I also have a pretty good idea of the things that I need to work on to execute it. So this project is going to be what I always dreamt of doing when I was younger, was to make my own video game, right? At one point, you might think the best way to make your own video game is to make your own movie, right? And bringing it even lower, or not lower, but the best way to get a movie made, right, is to write a book. Or in my case, I'm shooting to making a comic book. So that is my goal for 2023. I'm going to be making an illustrated comic book that's going to be telling very personal story, but also something that I think a lot of people will be able to resonate with, specifically creative people or people in the design industry or design spheres. So my goal to be doing this live, be doing it publicly and stream all my efforts and working on this project has sort of a two-way street type of thing, right? Where if I'm having to go live to work on this project, I have to work on it, right? Not only do I have to work on it, but I have to be very intentional when I sit down and work on it. Sometimes it can be a little daunting to work on a very, very big project and getting distracted or looking up tutorials that, have nothing to do with what it is that you're trying to achieve, which is all fine and dandy when you're trying to just learn or enlarge your skill set. But I think it's time that I focus in on what it is that's going to actually help me accomplish this, right? And this way I'll also be able to get feedback, right? So hopefully, sort of exposing the process is going to be able to help me not just have to look up what it is that I need to know in order to get this done properly, but actually have people call me out on what it is that I'm doing wrong. The other way for the street on this, right, is something I've struggled with a very, very long time, which has kept me from doing this before, is sort of imposter syndrome, right? So I'm very fascinated by the tech that we have available today and what it is that we can do with it as far as software, as far as hardware, and what that means for 3D artists. And of course, AI is all the buzz now. So that's definitely made its way into my workflows. So showing what kind of tools that I'm using and how quickly or easily you can pick them up and add them to your workflow, I think is going to be really valuable for a lot of people. Um, I mean, I haven't really run into that many people who are scared of AI. I mean, people who don't understand it are scared of it, right? But the people that actually start understanding it and start using it realize how much it empowers you as an artist or as a designer, right? It's nothing to be afraid of. Um, and if it is going to replace you, then it probably should. uh, More on that later. So, anybody else feeling imposter syndrome, anyone else feeling like there's a ton of great content out there and maybe your stuff you don't feel like is up to par. I feel that way. We all feel that way. Everyone has that, right? So the point I'm trying to make with that really is let me just show, what kind of output you can have and show that the process for making, I'm going to do my best to put out good work and I hope to do that consistently. But if I don't call myself out on it, I'm hoping my audience will eventually call me out on it or immediately call me out on it. That'd be great. And hopefully it can also inspire anybody else who struggles with the same things I struggle as a creative, which is, a lot of being the biggest obstacle in your own path, which has been my issue in many, many fronts. So if I can help someone else who's been suffering with that kind of issue, to me, that makes all this worth it. So on top of me obviously being held accountable by having to show the work in order to produce the project. So that is the project. That is why I'm back onto making content. And that's how you can expect to get educational content from me besides just seeing how I develop this project and seeing it come into fruition. If you're on YouTube or you're on Twitch, you'll catch me doing this live. If you're seeing this on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, wherever else I end up posting this, until I figure out the ins and outs of everything, I'm not going to be going live there. So what you're watching now is probably a snippet of a YouTube and Twitch live stream. So that's the format I'm going for. I could give a bit more background about why I've made that decision later on, but that's how I'm doing it. I'm going to go live. I'm going to work on this thing, and then it's going to get cut up into smaller bits of content, which will give you the highlights if you don't want to stick around for live streams, which I get people nowadays don't have the attention span for. Most people, or yeah. Okay. That wraps why I'm doing this. Moving on. what kind of format the content is going to have. So I came up with 5 rules as to how I'm going to be doing this. So first, I must stream every day. This is obviously not going to work out, right? Um, Whatever. Internet goes down. I have to take a break. Family stuff, emergencies, gotta live life. Might not happen every day. But I'm going to make a point of showing up every day, right? Maybe I won't be doing a long format like this. This is probably, I would expect the longest format for me to be doing, like an hour, 2 hours of live streaming a day. That's probably the longest I'll make it. Shortest, I'll try to come on 15, 20 minutes. And maybe not always in this setup. Maybe sometimes I'm sharing my iPad screen and just sketching, storyboarding, mood boarding, and that's what it's going to be. But showing up every day, showing the process every day, making sure I stay on top of it, which is something I already do. But channeling it in this way will make sure that all my efforts are always feeding this one project, and I'm not always or not going on tangents every other day. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2, sessions will have one of the following formats. First, workshopping or writing. Now, I'd rather call it workshopping than writing because for me to write, I need to get into a very clear headspace. I need to just kind of shut things out, just write. I've been using an AI writer too to help me out or kind of like jumpstart things. Or a lot of times I'll write something and then I'll ask the AI for the prompt, or I'll put in a prompt into the AI so that I can compare what I wrote to what the AI wrote, and it's not that far off. Sometimes it's really just like maybe like adding in a phrase or two that the AI put in that I didn't, or reorganizing what I wrote to fit a more formal format that the AI presents or something like that. But it's interesting that it really makes there's an interesting relationship between the human writing and the AI writing, and it's not necessarily better or worse. It's just kind of like an aid. I tend to look at myself in my camera or screen over here, and it's not far off from the actual camera, but I don't know what's weirder, if I look at the camera or if I look at my screen. Either way, it kind of just looks like I'm thinking off into the distance, but that's neither here nor there. So instead of writing, call it workshopping. So when I'm workshopping, think of it more like a podcast. So the themes that I'm exploring in this story, in this comic book, have to do with the struggles of being a creative and always having to keep up with latest tech, always feeling like you're being blocked, always feeling like, or you're blocking yourself. Um, yeah, basically the struggles of any creative, whether it's fashion, architecture, product designers, graphic designers, motion graphics, UX, UI designers, all you creatives out there, we all know what we can struggle with when we have artistic tendencies or creative tendencies, but we want to be pragmatic and produce and be consistent. So I'm really just exploring themes that help creatives, myself, really, things that I've found that help me execute more and better, right? So it's a very much a meta type of project. Like I'm pouring a lot of personal stuff into it, but in a way where it won't be boring or, unnecessarily revealing of my personal thoughts and opinions, but more so constructive, right? So workshopping, think of it more as sort of like podcast format where I'll go over ideas, tools, themes, books, history, things that I find that help enrich the story that I'm trying to tell. And that's sort of the lowest form of the content, right? Or the not lowest form, but it's really just me talking or me exploring things, right? So above that, or following that, next kind of format will be storyboarding. So storyboarding is more like research, right? So I have to quickly sketch out what kind of frames I'm going to be doing, what scene transitions I'm going to be using, how I'm framing the camera, who's in a in a strip, what characters are coming in, where's the setting happening, what's happening before or after, all that stuff that happens with storyboarding, what aesthetics, what kind of lighting I'm going to be using, all these things. So it sounds like I'm making a movie, but it's really, again, it's I'm going to be making stills. So they're going to be still renders, and maybe there's some cool format I could do where rather than being stills, it could be a comic book of like small animations or something. But I'm going to be using visual effects software to make this comic book with a combination of illustration. So these storyboarding elements are actually really derived from tools that I use to come up with marketing, branding, design concepts that I do for clients. Following that, there's production, right? So once you have it storyboarded, once you have your references set up, you did a research, you kind of have a good idea of where it is that you're going, you can actually sit down and do the work. So that'll be modeling, texturing, lighting, animating, all that fun, good stuff, right? So that's number 3 is production. You'll see me using Blender very, very heavily. That's going to be my main tool. Supporting tools will be Rhino 3D. Maybe I'll dabble in some Grasshopper again. And then the iPad definitely for Procreate and others. That's production. So number 4, revamping old files. Now this one's kind of interesting. Sometimes you just run out of juice, right? You just run out of gas. It's exhausting to work on a really, really large project. So something I've come up with, or something I like to do, which is sort of easy picking sometimes, but can really be fun, creative exercise, is to actually go through old files, look at something you did a year ago, 2 years ago, last week, whatever, and revisit it, reorganize it, tailor it now, level it up, make it fit the new project, right? And that also may, I think, hopefully will give a lot of insight in people on what kind of progression you can make over time, but also give myself insight into, the fact that maybe something I did 6 months ago that I didn't think was very good actually was just 5 or 10 minutes away from being decent or great, right? So I'm excited for that kind of format. That'll feel great. So that's rule number 2. We'll follow one of those 4 types of formats, right? Workshopping, just going through ideas. Think of podcasts, right? Going through ideas, themes, storyboarding, production, and revamping old projects. So, rule number 3, setting a goal and intention at the beginning of each session, right? So, the intention of this session is to just kind of say why I'm back, what my goal is for the end of the year, which is this project. And along the way, the process is going to serve to be able to give a lot of enriching content to you, hopefully. More on that later. Rule number 4, there will be a deliverable or output for each session. So not just an intention, right? Not just like, I think that was an important distinction for me to make, is it's not just about sitting down with the intention of working on something or producing on something. Like, I'm going to sit down and storyboard. I'm going to sit down and model something. But it's actually that at the end of the session, something comes out of it. If it's a sketch, if it's a page, if it's a crude render, or if it's a clay render, or if it's a small short animation, whatever it is, at the end, there has to be something that gets outputted, posted, shared, whatnot, right? Those will more likely make it to my personal page so that I can focus on putting the good stuff on the visual mode channels. Number 5, I must wear shirts and pants while streaming. That'll be important later. I can't enforce this on my audience, but I would urge you to do the same thing. If you're watching a live stream or if you're sitting down to work, wear pants and wear a shirt. Again, more on that later. Okay. So we're 20 minutes in. That's not bad at all. So I explained in the first 10 or 12 minutes why I'm back and what the project is, and very loosely, or as much as I need to go into it right now, and what the type of content you can expect from me. So that's a good 20 minutes. as I explained earlier, this is going to be much a sort of longer version of the type of format I'm going to be doing. And the reason is not only am I announcing why I'm back and I'm announcing I'm here and going over what I just went with over with you, but I'm actually going to do all these formats right now. And they're going to be real short, right? It's not, I'm not making anything too ambitious, but I do want to be able to extract some value out of doing this. I want to be able to test that everything's working well with the stream, because this is going to be my main way of creating the content, is doing this and showing up on YouTube and on Twitch, doing it live, and then cutting it up later for other channels. So I want to make sure that I'm able to do all these things that I just said I want to set out to do in this way. So if it doesn't work out here, I'm gonna have to redo this. But this is the trial run. So first one is workshopping. And I'm not gonna try and be too intellectual about this. I'm just gonna go right ahead and say the reason I'm doing a comic book is I think it's the most reasonable format for me to work on. I really enjoyed comic books as a kid. I really enjoyed reading as a kid. That led to my love for video games and movies, specifically video games and movies that really tell human stories, right? Not your Hallmark stuff, not the Marvel movies. They're fun. I'm not gonna trash on them. I'm not gonna trash them, but um, I mean, my favorite moment of the Marvel movies was the first time Tony Stark went, "I am Iron Man." The last time he went, "I am Iron Man." Like that to me was the highlight of the entire series. Um, for a real obvious reason, right? So it really infuses a lot of meaning into every little action that went into that character. And to me, that's the best developed character in the Marvel series. But um, and it's what always attracted me to architecture, was that, and why I studied architecture. It's because I felt like architecture encompassed all of the aspects of world building that you find in movies. And I mean, all of these things we're trying to invoke an emotion in people, right? That's really what good stories do, and good architecture does that as well. Architecture means something else today, especially in the United States. But looking at older architects, looking at public works like museums or parks, they really need to take into account who they're designing for. They need to really take into account who will be using that architecture in the future, and why they're building in a certain way that's always relating to the past and to the way that people used to live, and how people will recognize that type of architecture because that invokes an emotion. Um, I'm not really getting to the thing that I wanted to talk about. Well, I guess it's fine. I'm just workshopping, but real quick, the reason I'm not doing a book and I'm doing a comic book, not only because it's graphic, but I feel like book isn't the right format for me to work on. And I will say that the one book that really set me, my favorite book is that sort of describes the human condition and what might go wrong with the human condition if we give in to our vices and if we get into our behaviors, is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, if I'm not mistaken. And not to give away too much about the book, but essentially the whole thing about the book is, what if there's a civilization that becomes tribal again while another civilization advances well into the future, where pretty much everything, dating, professions, your biochemistry is all engineered, and you take a person from that old world and you drop them into the new world. I just think that book perfectly, not perfectly, but to me, it was really striking how that, and it really impacted me at a young age, that, as humans, we have these tendencies that are self-destructive and we idealize them sometimes. And all we want to do really is go back to the forest and hunt for rabbit or whatever we can get. um, so that's enough of workshopping. revealing a little bit there more about the project and what I see truly as the value of architecture, truly as the value of storytelling, and a bit more in depth as to why this project exists for me. So, moving on to the next type of format, which typically I'd want to do with an iPad, so I could use the stylus and use the screen. That's just how I tend to prefer to do storyboarding, is collecting images and sketching at the same time. But since I can't do that, I can't do that because I don't want to spend time setting up a camera I haven't set up yet. It's something I have to do. So I will, oh, that's not the right screen. One second here. Oh. What did I do wrong here? There we go. All right. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here with the Blender. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a tool here that I call, well, it's called Miro. And I use this tool as a method for mood boarding, for storyboarding, for just throwing a bunch of content into one place that I'm able to just kind of visually plan out ideas and filter out a lot of things and always keep reference in place. So here it is, my content and storyboard. So as I said, typically I'll start storyboarding more from the iPad so I can collect images and sketches. But once that's kind of done for, I'll bring it into here, right? So I'm able to map out sort of what it is that the journey is for me to accomplish a goal and all the different things that are involved in the process. So you see a lot of labels. I've actually gotten rid of a lot of content because the whole purpose here now is for me to fill this in, right? But I'll bring your attention to this area here. So you could see, there's a bunch of tools here on Miro that allow you to actually plan out, or it has a lot of productivity tools, a lot of templates that you can drop in order to make the most out of the activity that you're about to do, right? Like, I met a lot of people who just sit down and start working. I used to be one of those people, but it totally changed for me when I just took 5 or 10 minutes to remind myself of the bigger picture, remind myself of all the different pieces of the puzzle, all the small tasks that had to be done. And the most pressing thing, or the thing that's easiest for you to start tackling, may not necessarily be the most important thing you'd be doing at that moment, right? And so storyboarding, mood boarding, what is just collecting images, text, ideas, links into one place, can really, really help with that, right? So this is one idea I had for content, which is generally really how I do my workflows now. So initially, in this story, in this comic, we arrive at this location, which is a secluded location. It's sort of a house to a virtual character. And what I'm looking to do, what the character is looking to do, is sort of disconnect from the noise of the world, kind of step away from distractions and really get into a state of play in order to do his best work. And that's really where the story opens, right? We introduce the setting, right? This home of this character, and how I'm going to celebrate or really bring to light the different aspects of this character. And again, it is kind of a personal story for me. So the way that this character operates will be similar to the ideal way that I would operate. And AI has definitely made it into this part. So as you could see, I've done quite a bit of writing on establishing who, where, and what, and the different steps in the journey. Haven't quite reached the conclusion yet because I'm doing a lot a lot of the writing involved with the story isn't going to make it to the live stream. I'll tell you that right now. It's going to be a lot more about graphics. I'm a very technical person when it comes to software, when it comes to design. And when it comes to the creative things, I set an intention, or I make sure I have a good foundation for moving forward with the creative. But a lot of things for me are resolved in the process. And the writing is just something I'm going to be keeping to myself for the most part, as, as I just release, as the visuals start to be developed so that they can accompany the writing, right? I mean, ultimately, the writing is going to be dialogue in a comic book, right? There'll be some writing in the comic book that isn't dialogue, but the writing really just serves me in order to produce the story, right? And produce the dialogue. So that's storyboarding. What I can do here to advance storyboarding, well, not much else. I think I'll just introduce this tool. I'll show some of the things here. There's this one template that Miro has that's sort of a persona ID. So I kind of have to really dive into here on who this character is and who the anti-hero is, right? So that is something I'll do right now. Let's just copy paste this so that I have, not the anti-hero, or I guess anti-hero / villain. It's not playing nice, but I'm trying to copy paste this grid. There we are. And I'll put that there. Where, right? So yeah, we already have some development on where. So these are all AI generated images. I use the combination of DALL-E Mini, Midjourney, and Dream Textures, which is actually, if you don't know, Stable Diffusion is sort of the program that underlies all these operations. And that lives within Blender. It's actually a plugin for using Stable Diffusion within Blender. So these are different pieces of AI content that I did to inspire the project that I already had going. So you see here early screenshots of the render that we just saw up there or over here. And that's the setting of where our story opens. Then this is more, what? This doesn't really fit into what. This is also where. These are just kind of, this is more professional. This is more from when I was working, but it was different inspiration from different things I saw on Behance or Behance. I still don't know how to say that platform. But kind of just pulled different projects from people that I really liked, how expressive their visuals were of very ordinary or very well-designed items to kind of inspire the aesthetic of the vignettes or of the panels for the comic book. What is very much, again, written and not illustrated yet. That's why we do these live streams, is to develop it in the process. So this is what storyboarding really looks like, right? Or for me, at least, this is the type of stuff it'll be kind of reviewing my favorite works, my favorite artists, things that I find interesting, and really picking apart what it is that some things work and other things don't. Like, for example, I guess if we get into this one, I'd love to give credit to the artist, but I did not have the intention of showing this to anybody, so I don't have that. But if we just pick apart this one, for example, I love the fact that the color tone, the oranges, really make its way to the objects picked as context for the scene. They're very earthy, very sculptural, very classic and traditional, which creates a very large contrast with the modern furniture piece that's used here, with the greenery that's placed on, with the LED lights. You have very ambient, warm sun lighting contrasted with the white LED light over the desk. So there's just a great level of contrast happening here that works really well in a harmonious image, and yet has a proper amount of balance and amount of contrast on here. And I love the retexturing of plants to just fit that theme, right? If it's outside of that. And it's cool the different, iterations that this person did with the just tweaking the scene a little bit, right, to kind of show how the different color palette of that one piece could fit different aesthetics. I really got to find who did this and give them credit. I'll add that to the show notes. That's something people say. I'll add it to the video notes, the show notes. I'll add it to the description in post. Okay. So that gives an introduction to storyboarding. So the next thing is production. Now, for production, there's really just one thing that I had in mind, which is sort of like, again, the way I'm talking about this project is kind of like a little bit like Alluring to a movie, right? It is a comic book and it is illustrated, but it is also quite cinematic in the way that I'm envisioning it. So I want to open with a quote, kind of cheesy, but there's just one quote I've been obsessed with uh, by Pablo Picasso, which is every act of creation is first an act of destruction, which I just found. I think I came across that quote when I was working when I was running a wood shop. I was doing a lot of fabrication work, which, by the way, for doing digital modeling or uh, kind of like if you think like, oh, you model buildings, could you model a car? Could you model an iPhone, whatever it is, if you can get your hands dirty, if you can work a construction job or any other kind of job like that, where you really have to take things apart and put them back together, it really gives you an understanding or an ability to just kind of observe things or like look at things and understand how they're put together. What's an O-ring for? What's a fastener for? What's a bolt? When to use a bolt, when to use a screw, when to use a nail, and what kind of objects use those things. So very simple in Blender. I'm not trying to do a beginner's course here, but you can just add in Shift A, add in a text element. And in Blender, you always hit Tab to go into edit mode for things. So here I can type my quote. And I'm going to split it up into 4 parts because I want to be creative, do something a little bit different with the word creation and the word destruction, which means that I would do every act of creation. Every act of. All right. My mic is in the way. Hopefully it'll still work if I put it up here. So every act of, I'll just go ahead and duplicate that. Probably gonna have to double up on work here because I haven't edited the words yet, but that's fine. Creation. And then Shift D to duplicate without creating an instance. So duplicating without creating an instance means you can still edit it. When you duplicate and make an instance, if you edit one, it'll edit the other, right? Because they're exact copies of each other. So is first an act of, and shift click to select different things, move it over, tab to edit creation, and I'm going to type destruction. All right. So real cool way to quickly edit text in Blender. You just select the text, you go over here on the right side to the properties, and down here on object data properties, we have the option to create geometry on the text. So I'll just open up this section called geometry and add in some depth. So that's not quite what I want. That's adding a thickness to it. I think I want to go to profile. Nope, not profile. I mean, you can change the font, you can change the size, you can shear it, meaning making it italic, underline it, paragraph, left alignment, center alignment, the whole thing. And I'm not quite finding what I was looking for. Yeah, it was right here. How did I miss it? Under geometry, offset, extrude. So Offsetting it is not what I want, although that can lead to some very cool results. When I extrude, I give it some vertical thickness. And there we go. So I'll look at this from the top. I mean, I want to start setting up a camera just so that all these decisions about depth and of the model, I start making these decisions based on the view that I'll be using. So I'll go ahead and add in with Shift A, add a camera, make it look straight down just by taking away all its default rotations. Move it up, move it over, and then hit the camera icon right here to look through the camera. We're working with over here on the object properties, object data properties. I can see on the camera properties that I have a 50 millimeter. So that's fine. I'm just going to go ahead and move it up. So G to move and then Z to log on the Z axis. I've got a frame here. How I frame this text into the camera? Well, right here on the object data properties as well. I would go under camera settings here. Nope, just kidding. Where are you at? Safe areas, viewport display, composition guides. And so I can add thirds, center, golden ratio, sure. I think that's all I need, thirds and center, so that I can make sure that things are well aligned here. So I have my center line. So right there, I kind of have the first line just above the middle. I'm actually going to kind of move it up or on the y-axis so that the top of it just sits below that third of the frame. If you don't see the lines, which you might not, maybe you do, it looks pretty good on the, it looks better up on this monitor than the monitor I'm using. But just in case you can't, I can go here to always edit what the viewport looks like. So I can change the background here to white. There we go. Just by hitting viewport and then turning it there. So now you see the dashed lines possibly a bit better. If I move the camera around, it's the grid lines that are following along with the camera movement that aren't placed there, right? Those are those thirds, that middle line and that diagonal line, or the golden ratio line. Okay, so just add some thickness to all these with some extrusion. There we go. And I want it to be a bit more like that. I haven't even selected a font, but for the sake of just moving forward, let's not worry too much about that right now. Now I'm going to save, because you want to save. I'll save one place for now and save it proper later. Okay. So how to stylize the text. So I'm just going to start texturing this in a very abstract way. And for that, I want to start getting into my rendered view. So I always start rendering by using the Eevee render. It just works faster than cycles, even though right now I'd probably do fine with cycles. But since I am streaming and testing this out, I'm just going to stick to what I know is safe. So Eevee is more efficient. I'll just set ambient occlusion and bloom on. And clicking or holding Z and then going over to my rendered. And it looks like crap because there's no lights in the scene. So I'm going to start adding lights, or start illuminating one of my objects. So for example, I could select creation, which is what I intended to do. Go over here to material, create a new material for that text. And it'll by default create a principled BSDF, which has many material properties, but I'm just concerned with emission right now. So over here on emission, I'm going to go ahead and change the color, make it like a teal, and then bump it up, right? So because I set bloom on, right, starting to, we see the bloom. I can go back to the render settings, open up Bloom, and I can edit it here so it's not so crazy. Or it can diffuse a bit further away, but it can be a bit less intense. There we go. So high radius, low intensity makes the bloom spread far, but not be so intense close to the originating object. Cool, that looks nice. And destruction. So if I wanted to copy that over and then make it slightly different, right? I would first click on destruction, then click on creation, Control L to link materials. Now destruction is also teal. Right, I go to the material, and then I should have named my material proper. I'll click back on creation, call it teal light by renaming it there on the right. Click on destruction. New material. So right here, I can just create a copy from that. So I can call it warm. What did I call the other one? Emission, I think. All right, warm emission. So make that orange. Cool. Now, I really like the effect where it's outlining it. You can kind of see it like an orange. So I actually want to bring that into the actual object, like actually have it outlined as well. So a way to do this is with a modifier. So what I first need to do is add another material to this object. So I'll go ahead and hit add. And I just created here with the plus sign, added a new material slot here. And I'm just going to make it with a base color of black. Just so that I could see it right now, or maybe even if I can see it, I'll make it magenta just so it sticks out. You'll see what I'm doing here. So I'm doing that to creation. We add a new material here, and then we have what are called modifiers. So these allow us to add different things to the geometry without actually having to do any real work. So I can hit solidify, and I can add a thickness to it. So we see there it looks like it's doing the same thing as extrusion, which is not what I intended, but let's see what's happening. What I wanted to do with that material is if I go down here for the solidify settings and I open up material, I have a material offset setting. So if I just hit that over 1, it should be using the other material. But it is not. That's strange. If I make it not a text object, but make it a mesh object, convert to mesh, solidify, material. There we go. I guess that doesn't work for text. That's weird. I have to make it into a mesh in order for this to work. It's a bummer. Anyway, what I can do is do the old Shift D trick. So I'm gonna have a copy of it. I'll hit escape, go back to the text object data properties here and use this offset thing so it moves outward. And then I can just, using the arrows here on the right, move this material up. So now I have basically a duplicate of it. You can see there it's now outlined. So if I wanted to make it have like a white glow for an outline instead, that's kind of cool. The base color doesn't matter anymore if I just like whiten it out like that. That's cool. I like that. Let's go ahead and do the same thing to destruction. So Shift D to duplicate it, escape to have it snap back to the origin, go back to text, offset. So right here, give it some offset and give it a new material slot. I can set it to the warm emission as well, but then duplicate it. So it's a duplicate of the warm emission, and then rather than making it orange, I'll make it red and make it much, much brighter. Why is that not working? It is working. It's just too bright or not enough offset. Not enough offset. No, it's offset. Oh, derp. I got to move it up on the material slot so that it actually applies to it. Yeah. And then we get a funky thing like this happening. So when this happens, it's the font that you're using or the level of offset that you have happening. So they haven't worked out all the kinks for every single font here. So, you know, if you go too far, you see there, like I just brought it back down from the offset and it kind of corrected itself. So sometimes you might have some unpredictable results, as you could see there, depending on what font you use. That's actually really cool, especially for destruction. It kind of looks broken up. Yeah. All right, I've been going for 53 minutes since the beginning. I think I've been doing, what, maybe 15 minutes of production? Hopefully not more than that. Last thing I'll do, I suppose, I'll just add a fill light. Actually, two things I'll do. I'll add a fill light, so I'll just throw in an area light. I'll move out of the camera's way for now. Move this light up, kind of towards the center of where the letters are at. And then for the light properties, I will make it larger, make it brighter. There we go. So you see it's like hitting those letters now. So they're nicely seen by the camera. If I go back to the camera view, those are now seen. I could give this more interesting material. So let's call this base. Typo there, but that's okay. Link materials. Okay, Control L. After selecting, you want to select the last object that you want to link to. Okay, make them not that gray, or make the light brighter, because it's supposed to be white. Yeah. And then to get some more interesting shadows on the actual letters, what I'll do is you do Shift A. This is a little trick I always do at the end of all my renders. Not all of them, but it does a lot with minimal effort. Create a sphere, set it at the center of your scene, blow it up. And then I start working. Well, I mean, I could do it from the right, the properties panel here. Make a new material for it, call it fog. And we're gonna right click where it says the principled BSDF. We don't want any material on it. So I'm actually gonna click on it, scroll up, whoop, scroll up, remove. So it has no material. It just shows up black. Go open up volume, and then on volume, select volume scatter. So now this actually is introducing fog into the scene. You just got to use like a 0.001 factor to begin with. And it just kind of adds to the glow, or it adds to the sort of the way that the light behaves in the space. You kind of get this cool foggy effect. You don't really get it out of this one currently. I'm going to make the background totally black. Over here, and you have your world settings. So you see there's like some light strength from the dark gray. If I just turn that off, we go pitch black. And in order to see those fog effects, I would switch back to cycles. Well, not back to cycles. I would now switch to cycles so that I could see what it is that I'm doing. Before I do that, before I hit cycles, I will switch out of rendered mode. If you're not using a beast of a machine, it can crash your Blender to just kind of switch render engines or switch render settings in the middle of rendering. It happens to me. So I'll go ahead and put 30% over here from my output properties. So I'm doing 30% of the render quality that I'm expecting at the output. And go right here. Switch now to cycles, set it to GPU. And there we see we get quite a bit of noise due to the fog. So it would take quite a while to have this noise settle in. And you can see like the emission is kind of blown out from cycles. So there's some tweaking you end up having to do for materials when you switch from EV to cycles. Like this blue is just way, or I even have to move. Yeah, I have to move the white element. So I do GZ to move on the Z axis and then just type negative 0.05. There we go. And it's just slightly under the blue so that it can reveal the blue. Okay. And the last form of, or the last format I'm going to be doing for these live streams, which I haven't done in this one, is revamping old files, which I'm not really going to do. I'm not going to do so in depth. What I am going to do is just kind of save this, open an old file. It's not really revamping. I wouldn't consider that, but I did this graphic for the front page of my website. And what I'll do is I'll just overlay this text into that scene because this is a very full-fledged scene. So on the home page of my website, you'll see this animation. It's just kind of like this prism, and it's emissive textures, it's lights, it's rotating in front of the camera, there's fog, there's post-processing effects, the whole deal. So if I hit render just to kind of show you what that looks like, I'll have that take up the whole screen. Yeah. So as you can see, like as I let it go, those light streaks become more and more pronounced. And so this is a little animation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just, as a revamp, totally a cop out. I'm fine with that. Copy the text elements here. Copy everything. Or proper way to do this, actually, since I'm supposed to be explaining and teaching, I'll just go ahead and select all the text elements, hit M, so they're part of their own collection. So I'll call it quote. I should be crediting Pablo Picasso here, but I'll do that off stream. So in this file, I have the quote, right? All the elements, all the text elements into one collection called quote, and I'll save this file. And keep it open, or I can close it. I'm going to choose to close it because I am tired and I'm ready to close this out. But in this file, where I'm going to bring in the text, I'm going to go ahead and click on the sphere and hit H. That hides it from view, but does not hide it from the render, so it'll still do what it's supposed to do. I'll go to File, Append, find my project I just did, title letters, and I can append, meaning import or link, anything from that file that I just created. So lights, images, fonts, materials, meshes, textures, the world settings. And at some point, not when I started using Blender, but at some point they let you link entire collections. So I can bring in that quote collection. Boom. I just got to find my camera view. And what I had done when I opened this file is you go to the top right of any one of these sort of little areas and you split it off so that you can keep your camera view and you can work in 3D at the same time. So I'll rotate RX, rotate on the X axis, hit 90, move it into place, scale with S, and scale and move, you know. Ooh, that fits pretty nice. Yeah, I can kind of just work around that's pretty cool. It kind of takes the text a bit closer to the edge than I would like, but that's not a bad fit. And what I can do to make this even more interesting, depth is always more interesting than no depth. So what I could do is move these behind the prism and make them bigger. That should be interesting. And then move destruction closer so it's all kind of staggered to the camera. Make it bigger. Move this closer. Yeah, closer and smaller. Make destruction more more prominent. Love it. Well, I don't know about love it, but it's not bad. Especially for the amount of time I put into it. All right, and again, this is a test stream, so I have no idea how this went. I mean, I'm looking at it over here. I tested the audio in the beginning. It seemed like the audio was going well. I wanted to start at 8, and I didn't figure out how to have the chat going. So hopefully everything went perfect as far as audio and no interruptions on the streaming and whatnot. If it didn't, I'll have to redo the session. But yeah, thanks to those people who viewed. Thanks to everyone else who has viewed and stuck around. So if you want to see more of these, you could subscribe. You could also, if you went to go check out the animation that I did and put on my website, you could subscribe to the mailing list. That's the most direct way to find out about the things that I do. But all content will be driven by the live stream, and then you can always catch the highlights on YouTube, on Instagram. I'll start a TikTok. But yeah, I mean, this is the first piece of the year. So from here, you'll start seeing this session be clipped up everywhere else. So here we see the render putting through because we said at the end of every session, we got to have some kind of output, even if it is a little rough. I would love to spend more time on this, tweaking it and making it better. You know what? I'm just going to hit cancel. Because I'm just going to do something real simple. I'm just going to improve the colors. And keep the depth of field. Because it's making what's in the foreground really, really blurry. But I'm digging that. I'm just going to have to tweak the colors of destruction. So it just doesn't go. It kind of was cool when I was doing it as a standalone thing. But now that it all has to, now that I brought it into this file and it all has to play together, it doesn't work anymore. So just going to go ahead and change the color or remove that. Oh, it was purple because it didn't, So it didn't transfer the other material, which is strange, but that's why it's showing up purple, because it doesn't have any material, I'm assuming. So I'll just go ahead and give it a red emission, something that approximates the, or an orange emission, something that approximates the cube color, something more reddish. Nice. And then make the other one. Again, it's like I made these using the Eevee render, so having to switch over now to cycles is making it, I have to kind of retweak it. And here I was saying goodbye, and now I'm like still going. This is why I also live stream, because it caps me. I tend to want to put in an hour, which I'm 7 minutes over. And then it's 3 a.m. and I'm like, what have I done? So yeah, this is a good way of keeping me in check. Because now the only thing I can really afford to do is change these colors, hit render, say goodnight, clip this up tomorrow, put it up, and get on with the next one. So again, yeah, even this 1 hour and 10-minute session, I did way more than I intend to do on a typical session, right? So I went through pretty much every format that I have in mind for doing. And I kind of did each in a 10-15 minute time span, or even like sort of quicker. I don't like the blue anymore. No, you know what? It's fine. I'm thinking about it too much. Let's make it yellow. We'll just keep it to warm tones. Yeah. Yellow and white. white. Why am I like this? What is happening? Why am I not doing what I'm intending to do? This is white. Oh, because yeah, I lost the other. No, that's white. And then this is it not? And then this is teal. It's got to move up. There we go. Something is weird here. There we go. That's what I wanted to do. I think. No, I wanted the teal to be yellow. I think I was changing the same material over and over. Derp. That's too green. Yes. And then same yellow, less saturated. Yes. All right. I could click around and find a frame where the light, so as you can see, there's lights on the prism, and whoa, this is working really fast, actually. I'm able to just go through the animation and see where the lights of the prism hit the letters, kind of just right. I'm also gonna, I'm just gonna fake it. I'm gonna throw in a light here. So I can shift right click to add in a light. Or to change the origin, sorry. Shift right click to change the origin place of the model, so I can then add a light where I clicked. And then to fake the effect of the spotlight, I am going to, you get this extra setting in cycles, which I don't know why you don't get in Eevee, which is the beam shape, the spread. So a larger beam shape will mean like a softer, more spread light. And there we go. A shallower beam will mean yep. A more focused, more direct light. And I'll make that softer. Just to hit the letters just like that. Cool. Okay. So the post-processing effects will make that more interesting. And I just realized because I glitched out when I switched over to doing this and working on this monitor. That's pretty cool. I totally covered my camera. So where am I? Not that. There I am. That's how that was supposed to go. Well, I'm back and I'm wrapping up. So again, if you stuck around for the whole thing, which I mean, I've seen just a few viewers there. Thanks for sticking around for the whole thing. I hope the stream went well. I just saw it glitch a little bit. And again, I'll try to get that fixed, see what that's about. Hopefully the audio worked fine if my video didn't. But yeah, so thanks for the first episode of the year. I'm going to be putting something up every day, even if it is just for a little bit, checking in some development on this project. So if you're just catching the tail end, this is test stream, first one of the year, where I went through every format that I'll be doing, and it's all in service of completing a project, a comic book that I'll be finishing by the end of the year, and I'll be working it on these live sessions and then clipping the highlights for other platforms. So again, thank you. Have a great night, and I'll see you on the